Ayubowan. So this is the third lesson that we're doing in terms of a reading component. So this is common for the IELTS academic students as well as the general students. Why? Because this has the different types of reading questions that you could come across. Now, I'm not telling you that you're going to get everything, right? But these are the probable types of questions. You could get any of these for your exam. All right. So, the main concern for the students is, what is this difference? Okay. Now, what is the difference between the academic IELTS and the general IELTS? Why are the question types similar? Well, the question paper structure, as I taught you in the very first video, right, is the same. Structure, you have three sections rather, not passages, three sections, right, and you have 40 questions. So, then what is the real difference? The texts for the academic reading tests, they are taken from academic materials like books, journals, articles, publications, right? And newspaper articles which are more academically related topics. Whereas, texts for the general reading texts are taken from materials that you find on a day-to-day basis, okay, in any English-speaking country or usual country where we have English kind of material. So, it could be handbooks, advertisements, notices, newspapers, general topics. Alright, so moving on, what are the different types of tasks that you could come across? You have the multiple choice. True for MCQs are those ones, right? Identifying writers' views and claims. Matching headings. Matching sentence endings. Summary completions, table completion, diagram label completion. Identifying information, that is true, false, not given type of questions, right? So here you have true. Let me just get a better, darker color. We can have true, false, or not given. Or the other type is yes, no, not given. Then we have matching information, matching features, sentence completion, note completion, flowchart completion, short answer questions. So you could get a variety of these question types for the exam. Now, academic reading sample tasks. So we'll have a look at some academic ones as well as some general ones. But don't worry, okay? Even if you're doing general, even if you're doing academic, let's practice the skill. There's no harm in practicing the skill, okay? So, the rocket from east to west. The invention of rockets is linked with the invention of black powder. Okay, so we have a lot of information about inventions. You have to read the questions and then I'll come and find the answers. Look at the following items, questions 7 to 10, and list of groups below. Match each item with the groups which first invented or used them. Write the correct letter in boxes 7 to 10. So if you have your answer sheet, this is extracted from sample answer questions, right? So if you have your answer sheet, you would put down the answer in your answer sheet, okay? Note, you may use any letter more than once, okay? Black powder, rocket-propelled arrows, rockets as war weapons, the rocket launcher, okay? Right, so let's go and say black powder, okay? Right, so where do we find black powder here, right? Most historians of technology credit Chinese with its discovery, okay? So who found the black powder? The Chinese, there you go. That first one is there, A. Okay, Chinese is A. Rocket-propelled arrows for fighting. Okay, so for fighting, let's see. Okay, Let's go rocket-propelled arrows, rocket-propelled arrows. We don't find it here, so we move on to the next one. Such weapon. We have to see. Aha, here. So let's read. Another weapon was the arrows as flying sab, which could be fired from crossbows. The rocket placed in a similar position to other rocket-propelled arrows was designed to increase the range. A small iron weight that was attached to a bamboo shaft. Okay, so who used this first? Such other weapon from the Chinese. Tube gunpowder attached to the near one, right? By cylinder. Okay. Another weapon was the flying sab, positioned to other rocket-propelled arrows. Okay. So who used them first? It was I only see it there, so that's probably going to be the Chinese again. Okay. So again, Chinese. Rockets as war weapons. Okay, so we're looking at the rockets as war weapons. Let's see. Where do we see? Here, rockets. Rockets. So we have to see who used it first or who invented it first, right? Do we see rockets before that? Yes, 2 rockets. Okay. Rockets. Okay. Below the rockets, it says it used it, but we don't know who invented it. Stabilized, no. 2 rockets attached, we don't know. Rocket itself. It was not until the 18th century that Europe became seriously interested in the possibilities of using the rocket. So Europeans were interested, but who actually used it? Prior to this, rockets were only used as pyrotechnic displays. The incentive for more aggressive use of rockets came within the European continent. Okay, so the use of it, aggressively was within the Europe, but from far away India, whose leaders had built up a corps of rocketeers and used rockets successfully against the British in the late 18th century. So who really built it up and used it? It was the Indians, but Europeans then later started using it more aggressively. So India first invented it, so B. The rocket launcher, okay. So let's go and see rocket launcher. This side, do we see the rocket launcher? No. So I'm scanning, okay. Rocket launcher. Here. Let's read it. Own launcher, haha. The Americans developed a rocket complete with its own launcher. So there you go. They developed it. Okay. So we don't see anyone developing it before them. So they were the first. So I would say it is the Americans. There you go. So you have to skim and scan to find the answers. Right? Next one. Academic reading sample task. We are having a look at table completion. So these extracts are academic, but the skill is table completion. So you can do it, right? Anyone can do it. A remarkable beetle introducing the dung. First beetles, right, into a pasture is a simple process. It's talking about beetles. Let's have a look at, so they've got a glossary here. Dung, the droppings of animals. Cowpats, droppings of cows, right? Questions 9 to 13. Complete the table. Instructions. No more than 3 words. Remember, instructions. Follow the instructions. Answers need to be grammatically correct. Spellings need to be correct. You have to make sure that you fit in with the instructions, right? So we've got a table: species, size, preferred climate, complementary species, start of active period, number of generations per year, Right, okay, so let's have a look at it. Now we're supposed to find details about the Spanish species as well as the South African ball roller, right? So Spanish, preferred climate, start of active period, number of generations per year. So let's go and scan Spanish. Okay, scanning. You have to scan. Right, Spanish. Where do you find that word? South African is here, right? Where is the Spanish? South African ball rolling again is here. Right, so here it is Spanish, right? Spanish species that buries dung in chambers that hang like fruit from the branches. South African beetles dig narrow tunnels, right? Okay. It talks about it. Then we have to have a look at the climate here. Temperate climate Spanish species. So what's it preferred climate? Temperate. Do we have to write temperate climate? Not really. Why? Because they say preferred climate. So just the type is enough, temperate. Start of active period. The former are slow to recover from the winter and the cold, right? They are slow and produce only 1 to 2 generations from offspring to late spring until autumn. The latter which multiply rapidly in early spring. So active is early spring and they produce 2 to 5, okay? So I would say early spring. Now here comes the question, can you write numbers or should it be words? Now it says no more than 3 words, right? So here also it gives you the words. So I would like to keep it in words, okay? Remember, 2 to 5, not 1 to 2, that is not producing that, that's slow. Actively means rapidly, 2 to 5, right? So off you go, 2 to 5. If you write this, they will not mark it wrong because there's numbers here, but I'd like to follow the instructions. Choose no more than 3 words, and that's why I'd like to keep it with words only. South African ball roller climate complementary species. So I find the South African species there, but ball roller is here. Who is it? It's a subtropical beetle. So what climate does it prefer? Subtropical. Remember, hyphenated words are considered as one word. So this is like one word. Complementary species. Oops, sorry. This side. Commonly works with the South African tunneling species, okay? So, because I can write only 3 words, I would write South African tunneling. I'm not going to write species. Why? Because I can only write 3 words. If I write species, it's going to be 4 words, and anyway, species is here. So South African tunneling is sufficient. Okay, next one. Academic reading sample task. We have to complete a flow chart. Effect of low-calorie diet on the aging process. So it has details about how the low-calorie diet would get involved in the aging process. Okay. So lots of information here. I go to the question. Choose no more than 2 words from the passage. How a caloric restriction mimetic works. So CR mimetic is there. It leads to less of something is processed, and that will lead to the production of ATP, which is decreased. So I'm going to scan for ATP. because that's easy. ATP, ATP, so we have ATP here, I have ATP here, I have ATP here, I have ATP here, and then I have ATP here. That's it. But what are my keywords? ATP is decreased, okay? So I go back and see where can I find reduction of ATP. This is generate, does not have that. Right, ATP decreases, seems like a probable one. Reduces ATP synthesis. So ATP synthesis and generation is producing it. So this seems the right answer, not this. Processing the ATP production, not really. So it doesn't have decreasing. So let's read this sentence. Why do I read only that one now? Because I know that's where my keywords are, and I'm going to read that sentence to find the answer. So here, by limiting the food intake, caloric restriction minimizes, reduces, decreases the amount of glucose entering the cells, and it decreases the production of ATP. Okay, so what happens when you limit your food intake? Okay, what happens? Something of less is produced and the production of ATP is decreased. So what happens? What happens? The amount of glucose, right, entering the cells reduces and the production of ATP reduces. So what is here? Less glucose is processed because the amount of glucose entering reduces. So less glucose is processed, which means the production of ATP is decreased. Now there are two theories here. What are the two theories? Theory 1, theory 2. Cells damaged because fewer of something are emitted. And then theory 2, cells focus on something because food is short in supply. Okay, so cells less damaged by disease because fewer of something are emitted, and then cells focus on something because food is short in supply. Now let's have a look at it. Okay, emitted, 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 emitted. Where do we find emit? Aha, emission is there. Let's read this and see. One possibility means one theory relates to the ATP making machinery's emission of free radicals. What does it emit? Free radicals. So, coming back to our question, right? Fewer of what are emitted? Free radicals. Okay? And then the next one, another, here you go. That is the second one, suggests that decreased processing of glucose could indicate to cells that food is scarce and induce them to shift into an anti-aging mode that emphasizes on what? Preservation of the organism. What does food is short in supply? What does it focus on? Focus means emphasize. What does it emphasize on? Preservation of the organism, right? But how many words can you write? 2 words. Preservation of the organism is 4 words. So the most appropriate word would be preservation. Okay, so cells focus on preservation because food is short in supply. That is the only word that matches in properly grammatically. Right, okay. So next, we are going to have a look at a true, false, not given one. Okay. Now, when we are doing true, false, not given type of questions, you should remember that your keywords or the idea should match to what is there in the reading passage. Or it should have a contradicting view for it to be false. If it is not given, it means that your keywords or the idea behind it is not mentioned in the reading passage. Now, I'm going to tell you a very clear or rather a very easy example before we do this. Now, think for an example in the reading passage. It tells you there are 10 students in the class. 6 are boys. Question number 1. There are 4 girls in the class. Is it true, false, or not given? What do you think? Now, if you thought it was true, that's wrong. Why? I never mentioned anything about girls in the first 2 sentences in the reading passage. I only said there were 10 students in the class and 6 were boys. You assumed that the remaining 4 were girls based on what? Based on your personal judgment, okay? So that cannot happen. Your personal experience, your personal knowledge, what you have, does not come into play when you are doing reading. It totally depends on what is there in your reading passage only. So you must be very careful when you are doing these type of questions. It's not just the key word sometimes, it's that meaning of 1 or 2 sentences also sometimes, right? So let's have a look at it. Now, this is about the life and the work of Marie Curie. So, true, false, not given. Do the following statements agree? If it agrees, it's true. If it doesn't agree or contradicts, it's false. If there is no information about it, it is not given. Marie Curie's husband was a joint winner of both Marie's Nobel Prizes. So let's go and see Nobel Prizes. Nobel Prize. Let's read. She is famous for her work on radioactive and was twice a winner of the Nobel Prize. With her husband Pierre Curie and Henry, she was awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics. So with her husband, she got 1, yes. Then sole winner of the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. Okay. So did she get both with her husband? No. Very clearly it says only 1 with her husband and the other one she was a sole winner. So this is false. Marie became interested in science when she was a child. Let's see. From childhood, Marie was remarkable for her prodigious memory at the age of 16 and won a gold medal. Does it say that she was interested in science? We don't know. We don't know if it's true or false because no information was given there. So we would say not given. Because interested science child was not there. Marie was able to attend Sorbonne because of her sister's financial contribution. Sister, sister, sister. Finance, sister, let's read that bit. Here we see our keywords. Because her father lost his savings through bad investment, she then had to take work as a teacher. From her earnings, she was able to finance her sister Bronia's medical studies. So Marie Curie funded her sister Bronia for her medical studies in Paris. Look at the next bit. On the understanding that Bronia would in turn later help her to get an education. So what was the agreement? Now if I'm Marie, okay, I give my sister money Bronia in the understanding of what? In return, later, Bronia would help me to get an education. So that means I give her the money. In return, she gives back the money when I want to study. In 1891, this promise, what was the promise? To give her back the money to study, was fulfilled, and Marie went to Paris and began to study. So her sister gave back the money, supported her financially. So she was able to attend Sorbonne. We don't know if it's Sorbonne. Let's see. Began to study at the Sorbonne, the University of Paris. Yes, she began to study, and that was at Sorbonne. So able to attend the Sorbonne because of her sister's financial contribution. Yes, and that is true. So you can see it's not just matching the keywords, but it's also understanding the concept behind it. Alright, so moving on, we have matching headings. Now this can be a little difficult, right? So this is the physics of traffic behavior, right? And we are supposed to match the heading. So this is A, then we have B, we have C, we have D, we have E, and then reading passage 1 has 5 sections A to E. Choose the correct heading for each section from the list of headings below, right? So we have section A, B, C, D, E. Now B is already done. Okay, so B has used this. So we can cut it off from the list, right? Okay, so let's have a look at what A is. Now, how do we do that? Usually, what I do is read the first sentence and probably the last sentence and maybe a few sentences in the middle if I need to, right? So, some years ago, when several theoretical physicists, principally Dirk Helbing and Boris Kerner, began publishing papers on traffic flow in publications, normally read by traffic engineers, they were clearly working outside their usual sphere of investigation. So what were they doing? Though they were physicists, they were working outside their normal scope of work, right? So we're going to read the last sentence, which is starting from here. Here. In fact, the physics analysis suggested such spontaneous breakdowns in traffic flow probably occur quite frequently on highways. Okay? So, in fact, so probably they were looking at how the spontaneous breakdowns in traffic flow occurred on the highways. Okay, now apart from that, let's just quickly read through a few things in the middle. Of course, vehicles do not behave exactly like gas molecules. So what were they working outside their sphere? They were looking at probably vehicles in terms of gas molecules, different areas of study, right? However, physics modified the equation, description of traffic as a flowing gas. Okay, so they said traffic is like flowing gas, which is traffic is one study, about gas is another different study. Okay, and then they said that the spontaneous breakdowns in traffic flow occur quite frequently on highways. Wasn't really a concluding idea, but then it was kind of concluding this whole thing along, right? So coming back to our listings, let's have a look at it. How Matt's experiment, didn't talk about Max's experiment. How a concept from one field of study was applied to another could be probable because they were talking about traffic and gas flow. The lack of investment in driver training, didn't talk about investment. Areas of doubt, didn't really talk about doubt. How different countries have dealt, we didn't see about different countries, so I wouldn't take that. The impact of driver behavior, didn't talk about behavior. Proposal, no. So I think the most appropriate one for A would be number 3. Next one, section C. So when we go to section C, The physicists have challenged proposers to set a maximum capacity of vehicles on highways, right? They argue that it may not be enough to simply limit the rate at which vehicles are allowed to enter the highway, right? And the last one, they further suggest that preventing breakdowns in the flow of traffic could ultimately require implementing the radical idea that has been suggested from time to time, directly regulating the speed and spacing of individual cars along the highway with central computers and sensors. So what do they take over? They say to control the traffic flow and the breakdowns, that regulating the speed and spacing of individual cars should be done along with the human touch? No. Through computers or technology, by using central computers and sensors to communicate with each car's engine and brake controls, right? So here we're looking at taking away drivers' controls and giving them to computer or other technology control powers, right? A proposal to take control away from the driver. Yes, so they're looking at taking it away from the driver and giving it to central controlled computers. So I would take this as 8. D, okay, so let's have a look at D. However, research into traffic control is generally centered in civil engineering departments, and the theories of physics have been greeted with some skepticism. Some skepticism means some kind of disagreement. So let's have a look at anything we've got like that. Yes. Areas of doubt and disagreement between the experts. I would take that, and that is number 5. Section E. James Banks, a professor of the civil and environmental engineering at San Diego State University in the US, suggested that a sudden slowdown in traffic may have less to do with chaos theory than with driver psychology, right? So, as traffic gets heavier and passing lane gets more crowded, aggressive drivers move to other lanes. So consequently, as the road becomes congested, the faster moving traffic is the first to slow down. So what are we looking at? The impact of driver behavior, because when they try to swap, can you see? The traffic gets heavier and the passing lanes gets more crowded, and then the aggressive drivers move to the other lanes, right? Which then also tends to even out the speed between the lanes. So it's kind of how the drivers behave. So that I would take definitely as number 7. Alright, so I think you got a good understanding as to how to match. You have to be careful. Read through the topic sentence, which is the very first sentence in a paragraph, and sometimes maybe a few middle sentences and the last sentence for you to understand what this is about. Okay? Right. So, academic reading sample task, we're having a look at matching sentence endings, right? So we are supposed to complete each sentence with the correct ending, right? From A to F. So Harkness' research method was different to that of other writers because. Why? Harkness' reconstruction of the 16th century London scientific groups was new because why? Harkness shows that 16th century London scientists were innovative because why? Okay, right, so let's have a look through. These are the endings. She has the greatest knowledge of Elizabeth, the London. She started seeking to understand how basic terms were used. They worked as individuals rather than as a group. She examined how their methods evolved and changed. Clement Draper was the best scientist of his time. They used old ways of analyzing written information for new purposes. So seems like when their sentence ending starting with a capital letter doesn't really fit in. So I would take this out. Okay, let's have a look at the reading passage. So the next one is here, and then the last bit of the reading is here. Okay, so the first one, Harkness' research method was different to the other writers because why? So we have to see why it was different, okay? See, Harkness turns her skills on the City of London as a whole with surprising and fascinating results. Now, what was our question? Research method was different. It was surprising. But why? She began her research by asking herself a new question. Not what caused scientific revolution, but what the names science and scientist meant in the 16th century. So she didn't ask what caused scientific revolution, but she was looking at what these names meant of science and scientist. Okay? So, she started looking at how the basic terms were used in the past. She was looking at what science and scientists meant. Okay, so it was kind of the simplest form that she was looking at. Okay. So if you don't seek basic words, but at least how to understand how these words were, right? So I think the only thing which talks about terms is just that one. So I would take that one. Okay, B. Next one. Harkness' construction of the 16th century London scientific groups was new because why? Okay. Now let's have a look at 16th century. Nothing here. Right. Okay. So obviously our question was Harkness' reconstruction of the 16th century London scientific groups was new because what was the reason, right? So we have to have a look at new reconstruction of groups, right? So when we come down, we see 16th century, but we don't see our keywords. What are keywords? Reconstruction of the 16th century London scientific groups. So we have to see reconstruction, London scientific groups. Aha, here it is. Constructs these groups. Moreover, when Harkness reconstructs these groups, she provides not traditional static accounts but dynamic analysis of their practices as these developed over time. She makes it clear, right, that Elizabethan London already understood that knowledge nature had to rest not on authority but on familiarity. Okay, so now that bit is in the second line, which our keywords are not there. So our keywords should match to this answer. That's why this one doesn't really come in. But what did she do? She did what? Provides not traditional but the dynamic one. So she says no, right? It's not the traditional one, but they are dynamic. They evolved and changed. So the most appropriate answer would be D. Harkness shows that 16th century scientists were innovative. Why? Okay, let's see. Harkness argues that of many of the 16th century London scientists differed from the later ones of the 17th century. They saw themselves less as individuals out of gain fame than as members of larger textual communities bent on exchanging and compiling information. Okay, and then 16th century practices of note-taking and communication are among most novel and informative in this fine book. Okay, so what does she actually say? That they used old ways of analyzing information for the new purposes, right? They differed because they didn't see themselves as fame, right? But they were having a look at larger textual communities bent on exchanging and compiling information. So the last one should be F. Clear? So B, D, F. Now if you can't see it, this bit is enlarged. It's the same reading passage but made a bit, larger for you to see and find the answers in case you were struggling in the small one. Okay? Right. So moving on, multiple choice questions. Older people in the workforce, right? Now here, this is multiple choice, more than one answer. It's not just one answer that you have. Sometimes you have to select two answers. So let's have a look at it. Choose two letters A to G. Write the correct letters in the box. So we should select two advantages and we should be able to select two disadvantages, right? Two positive ones and two negative aspects. Alright, so let us have a look at the answers, right? So two advantages. Let's read it through. Clearly, when older people do heavy physical work, their age may affect their productivity, but other skills may increase with age, including many that are crucial for good management, such as an ability to handle people diplomatically, so people skills, okay? To run a meeting or to spot a problem before it blows up. So what are the positives? They can handle people well, people skills, right? And if they can run a meeting smoothly, spot on, and if there was something to happen, they could tell it well in advance, not at the last moment, okay? So let's have a look at the answers. They are less likely to be involved. No, didn't mention that. Only three things. Predict areas that can cause trouble in the future. Yes, before it blows up. They're able to train young workers. No, they can deal with unexpected problems. Not unexpected, but before they come, okay? They are more contentious. No. They are prepared to work for lower salaries. No. But they are more skilled in personal relationships. Yes. Next one, what are the disadvantages, right? So next para. And the virtues of young may be exaggerated. The few companies that have kept on older workers find they have good judgment and their productivity is good, says Peter Peterson, the author of a recent book. Besides, their education standards are much better than those of today. So the older ones' education was much better than the younger graduates today, okay? And also, they say that it's not worth training the younger ones because, in fact, young people tend to switch jobs. So, going back to the disadvantages, they are too confident. No. They injure themselves. No. They don't stay with the same company for very long. Yes. That's a disadvantage. Training. No. They are not well educated. Yes. They demand high salaries. No. So, the two disadvantages are C and E. Alright, so moving on, we have multiple choice, one answer. Older people in the workforce again, right? Okay, so let's have a look at the questions. Questions 1 to 4, choose the correct letter. A, B, C or D. Can you choose 2? No, you can only choose 1. Okay. In paragraph 1, the writer suggests that companies could consider. Now, what I do is I go and find the answer and then come and evaluate the options. Okay. Some people like to read the options and go. I prefer to understand what the question is, go and find the answer and then come and evaluate each of the options, right? So let's read para 1 because it asks us about the entire of paragraph 1, right? The general assumption is that older workers are paid more in spite rather than because of their productivity. That might partly explain why, when employers are under pressure to cut costs, they persuade a 55-year-old to take early retirement. Take away seniority-based pay scales, and older workers may become a much more attractive employment proposition. So they're thinking about taking away this seniority-based pay scale, that they're thinking of removing it, okay? But most employers and many workers are uncomfortable with this idea of reducing someone's pay later in life. Although manual workers on piece rates often earn less as they get older, so retaining the services of older workers may mean employing them in a different way. So they want to think about taking away the seniority-based pay scale, right, and abolishing pay schemes that are based on aged, thinking of it, okay. Probable. Avoiding pays that is based on piece rate, no. Increasing pay for older workers, no. Equipping older workers with new skills, no. Definitely they're looking at A. Skill team is an example of a company. So we have to scan skill team, skill team, skill team. Where is skill team? We don't have it here. Do we have it here? Ah, skill team. Skill team. What is skill team? One innovation was devised by IBM Belgium. Faced with the need to cut staff costs and having decided to concentrate cuts on 55 to 60-year-olds, IBM set up a separate company called Skill Team. What is that team? It defines it. Re-employed any of the early retired, not just everyone, specific people who retired early and who wanted to go on working up to the age of 60. So they are in a specific age group. They had retired and they could work till the age of 60. They were willing to do that. Should we read this bit? No. Why? Because they were not asking us for anything else. They were asking us skill team as an example of which. So it defines a skill team. That is what they're asking us for the definition. Offers older workers increase? No. Allows people to continue working as long as they want? No. Until 60 only. Allows expertise of older workers to be put into use? Yes, I mean a certain age group people to work until 60 seems okay. Treats older and younger people equally? No. The most appropriate answer is going to be C. Third one. According to the writer, what do we mean by bridge jobs? Bridge. Here. The best way to tempt the older to go on working may be built on such bridge jobs, right? So let's go and see, do they have bridge jobs here? No. So what are these bridge jobs? Part-time or temporary employment that creates a more gradual transition from full-time to retirement. Do I go through the studies? No, they're not asking me about studies. That's why I don't go through unnecessary information. So what are they asking me? If you read everything, then you're going to get confused, right? So what are they asking me? What is a bridge job or what are these bridge jobs? They are kind of part-time or temporary job opportunities. And that creates a gradual transition from a full-time to a retirement. So slow, nice and easy transition. Okay. So, tend to attract people in middle-age salary ranges? No. Are better paid? I don't know. Originated? No. Appeal to distinct groups of older workers? Yes, because the ones who are getting into retirement. So D seems the most appropriate answer. David Story's study found that what? Let's go and scan David's story. A study by David Story of Warwick University found, very clearly that's where our answer is, that in Britain 70% of the businesses started by over 55 survived, compared with an overall national average of only 19%. Okay, so what did he say? The older people who started it, Britain, 70% of the businesses started by people with over 55 survived. Okay. People demand no. Older people are good at running their own business. Yes, they survived. Okay. An increasing number of people are self-employed. We don't know. Few young people have their own business. We don't know. B seems to be the most appropriate answer. So here you can see the answers are A, C, D and B. Okay. Now if you had read all of these answers, then you're going to get confused. Anavashyawa කියවන්නත් එපා. හරි. උත්තර හැම එකක්ම evaluate කරන්න. Don't go to read unnecessarily. Why are we underlining the keywords? To see where our answer is. Then read that bit. Miss, but then I read that and then I read this, but then that is not what they're asking you. You should find the answer for what they're asking you. Okay? So let's stick to this idea of keywords and understanding those keywords. Right, the next question. Life and work of Marie Curie. So we're going to have a look at note completion, okay, which means everything about Marie Curie and her work. There we go. Choose one word. Can we choose two? No, just one word from the passage for each of the answers. Okay, so we have questions 1 to 6. Right, so let's go and see the answers, or how do we look at these answers, right? When uranium was discovered to be radioactive, Marie Curie found that the element called something had the same property. Okay, let's go and see. Same. Where do we find it? Probably at the start, so let's go from there. Here you go, radioactivity. So, 1896 was a new phenomenon which Marie later called radioactivity. Marie decided to find out if the radioactivity discovered in uranium was to be found in other elements. She discovered that this was true for thorium. Okay, so radioactivity was discovered uranium, and was it there in the others? Yes, it was there in thorium. So the answer is going to be thorium. Usually multiple choice questions and you know, these kind of completion probably come in order, right? So seems okay, we'll go like that. So thorium. Marie and Pierre Curie's research into the radioactivity of the mineral known as led to the discovery of 2 new elements. Okay. Discovery, 2 new elements. Right, okay. So let's see. Turning her attention to minerals, she found her interest drawn to pitchblende, a mineral whose radioactivity is superior to that of pure uranium could be explained, right? Pierre Curie joined her in the work that she had undertaken to resolve this problem, and later led to the discovery of the 2 elements polonium and radium. So they were looking at this pitchblende, and that later, with the help of her husband, led into the discovery of 2 new elements, polonium and radium. So pitchblende is that one. Okay, so here we would write it pitchblende. Right, okay, so we were just here. Next question, right? In 1911, Marie Curie received recognition for her work on the element of one. So we were searching 1911, right? And that's what I want to do. 1911. 1911, she was awarded the Nobel Prize for the chemistry of the isolation of a poor form called radium, right? So she found radium. Marie and Irene Curie developed X-radiography, which was used as a medical technique for who, right? Who did they use it for? Let's see. Irene. Right here. Marie Curie, with the help of her daughter Irene, devoted herself for the development use of X-radiography, including mobile units, came to be known as Little Curies, used for treatment of wounded soldiers. Who was it used for? Wounded soldiers, but because we can write one word, okay, used as a technique for soldiers. Marie Curie saw the importance of collecting radioactive material both for research and cases of what? Okay, radioactive material. So let's see. Radioactive sources. Not only to treat illness, but also to maintain an abundant supply for research, right? So not just for research, but also for illness, cases of illness. The radioactive material stocked in Paris contributed to the discoveries in 1930s of the and what was known as artificial radioactivity. Okay, right. So let's see 1930s. Right here. Okay. The existence in Paris at the Radium Institute of a stock of 1.5 grams of radium made a decisive contribution to the success of the experiment undertaken. This work prepared the way for the discovery of the neutron. Okay. So what did they discover? Neutron. All right. So there we go. We've done all the answers, right? Okay. Academic reading task, sentence completion. So this is about the origins of birds, okay? And we have to find the answers and complete the questions. Again, we have to use one word only and we have to answer 5 questions. Okay, so let's find the answers for these 5 questions. Huxley formulated his theory while studying a dinosaur belonging to a group called what? So, group called what? Group. We have to look out for that group. It's important that you find the word group, okay? I still didn't see the word group. So it says classification. Here you go, as theropods. So dinosaur belonging to the classification means group. What is that group? It's known as what? Theropods, okay? So here we write theropods. Herman rejected Huxley's theory. Herman rejected Huxley's theory because of the apparent absence of what in dinosaurs? Right, so let's go and say Herman Huxley. Okay. So we don't see Herman. Here. Huxley's idea fell out of favor for 50 years after Hellman's one. Hellman's theory was widely accepted. Hellman had noted that two-legged meat-eating dinosaurs lacked collarbones. What did they lack? Collarbones. And that was different to what he said. Okay, that's why it was different. So, apparent absence of collarbones. Fiducia and Martin believed that the ancestor of today's birds was a kind of early what? Let's see. It says today's birds was a kind of early what? Okay. So that's what we are trying to scan for. So here we see Alan Fiducia. Ornithologist is a person who studies about birds, okay? Paleontologist is a person who studies about fossils, right? Okay. Larry Martin are two vocal opponents. They contend that birds evolved from some unknown reptile at a time long before the dinosaurs. So what do they think? Right? It was from a kind of early reptile. Okay, next one. In cladistics, the blank between organisms' characteristics are major of importance. So let's go and see in cladistics, right? What is it? So cladistics. We'll have to go and see that word. Cladistics. Right? So supporters of cladistics, however, maintain that the difference between organisms do not matter, as it is the similarities between them that matter. Okay? So what actually matters? In the cladistics, similarities. Differences don't matter, but similarities matter. The dangerous of a primitive bird. Something dangerous on a primitive bird from Madagascar adds to the dino argument. Dino. Where do we find that dino? Here it is, right? A primitive bird from Madagascar is more like that of whatever the type of animal it is, retains yet some distinctive dino features, right? Including a long, vicious claw. Over a century since Huxley's discovery, it seems that cladistics may have finally settled the dino bird debate. So what did it have? A very long and vicious claw. Dangerous. Claw on a primitive bird. Alright, so there we have our answers. Now, we come into the academic reading sample task of summary completion, okay? This is a marvelous invention. Now, I'd like you to have a look at this on your own and then think, okay, what are the matching words? You have to get the idea and then match the words. It has to be grammatically correct as well. Okay, so now I've done a few. I'm sure you know how to do it now. Match the keywords. Okay, and here is the reading passage. So hopefully you finished it. Let us have a look at the answers. E, G, B, F. Have you got those? Right? If not, go back and have a look at it, because now you should be getting these correct. And this is fairly easy, right? The next one, plain English movement. So this again is a summary completion, okay? So selecting words from the text. There you go. This is the text. And now you have to complete it. So we have one more question and here you are. Now, this can be a bit challenging than the other one because you have to find the answers. Now, that was easy because you've got the answers, then all you have to do is match. Now in this one, let's have a look at it. No more than 2 words from the passage. Consumers often complain that they experience a feeling of what when trying to put together do-it-yourself products. Let's go and see what is their feeling. Oops. Feeling. The instructions accompanying do-it-yourself products are regularly cited as a source of unnecessary expense or frustration. How do they feel? Frustrated. So, a feeling of, you can't say frustrated, frustration. When trying to put together do-it-yourself products which have not been tested by companies on a who. Few companies seem to test their instructions by having them followed by a first-time user. So only a few do it, the others don't do it on a first-time user. Now, can we write first-time user? Let me put number 2 here. Is this 2 words or 3 words? 2 words. Why? A hyphenated word is considered as 1 word. So 1, 2, 2 words. In situations where not keeping to the correct procedures could affect safety issues, especially important that this kind of information is not left out, okay? Alright, so going back and then looking at it, often essential information is omitted. But should we omit it? No, we shouldn't omit that. It is especially important that essential information is not omitted. Okay. Are made about a certain being self-evident or consumer having a certain amount of what? Assumptions are made. So no assumption should be made about what? Some degree of special knowledge is assumed. So what do they assume? Special knowledge, which we should not do. Alright, so going to the last question. Lawyers, however, have raised objections to the use of plain English. They feel that it would result in ambiguity in documents and cause people to lose faith in what? Okay, right. So let's go and have a look at ambiguity. Here it is. So risk of ambiguity in the use of everyday language for the legal or official documents, and draw attention to the need for confidence in legal formulations. So the confidence would reduce in legal formulations, right? So the answer should be for number 5, legal formulations. 2 words. Alright, so I think we've had a look at the different types of questions, right? Most of it was extracted from academic reading so that it would actually be easier for you, right, when you're doing general than this, right? So I thought I'll put up some academic ones because academic one tends to be harder, right? But the question types are the same, only thing that the content might not be so difficult, all right? Okay, so I think with that we have come to the end of the discussion where we had a look at different types of reading questions that could come up for your actual reading test paper when you're doing the IELTS exam. All right. So with that, we conclude the lesson about reading question types for IELTS academic students as well as general students.